All right, we'll go ahead and call to order the October 10th, 2024 meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals. Welcome. Our first order of business is we are now being recorded. So there should be a little green light on all your mics so that the mics are on, and we will turn mics on and off as we get podium speakers, and away we go. Regular meeting minutes from our September 22nd, or pardon me, September 12th, 2024 meeting. Those minutes were provided in our packets. Are there any corrections to those minutes?
It's not a long meeting.
No, there wasn't a lot there. Hearing no corrections, do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Do we have support? Support. Discussion on the motion? All those in favor of adoption of the September 12th, 2024 meeting minutes as presented, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Excellent. All right, our next order of business is a variance request from chapter 12 of the Code of Ordinances for fences at 1014 Park Street. Is there somebody here to speak to that? If you could come to the podium, tell us who you are and what you would like us to consider. That Mike,
It's on here. It's the little button. Sounds quiet, but on.
Also speak loud.
Yeah, I guess it's for the recording. It's,
There it's
there
better,
you go.
there, now we got it.
Okay, also my name is Uwe Kierberg. I'm representing Robert Hutter. He is the owner of the house in 1014 Park Street. And he asked me to come to this meeting because he needs a personal representation. The reason for this is that around on the backyard, perhaps I have first to say that house is located, it's written in the documents that that is a front yard, but reality is that the house door and the opposite of the house, and in the back of the house was a fence, and that fence is pretty old. So he told me that probably is 30 years old, and it is now brittle and broken. And he wanted to rebuild it in the same height as it was before, but the constructor told him that for this he needs to have a permit because of the zoning requirements. So, and that is the reason that he filed this appeal, because it seemed to be that the zoning says that it is a maximum height of 3.6 foot, whereas he wants to have a 6-foot fence. The reason that he wants to have that is, if you're looking in the chart, there is an east zone because there are houses behind his house, and there is a relatively often cars are approaching through this backyard road, and therefore he wants to have some privacy, and that's the reason that he wants to have the fences the same height as it was before. That is pretty much the reason that he is filing for getting a permission to do this way. And by the way, the house is in the back of the main road, probably 100 meters. I'm German, therefore I'm counting in meters. Therefore, probably 300 yards in this case. And that is basically the reason that he asked for it.
All right, questions for the applicant from the board?
There were fence permits issued in 2004 and 2006. Maybe you don't know this, maybe staff does. Were those permits for this section of fence, and was a variance required at that time?
Stated in the documents was that there's no more documents, because I was asking the same question. What was it 2004 and 6?
Yeah. And it's a 6-foot fence today, correct?
Yes.
Is the design changing, or is it just there's too much? So I believe you can repair a fence if it's damaged, but I assume we're doing a full rebuild, so that's why we need to. Okay.
Full rebuild, right.
So it's falling down, correct?
Yeah, when you look in the pictures, you see that it is.
Yeah.
pretty rotten.
Other questions for the applicant?
The fence looking at packet page 12, it looks like the fence extends into the easement, which is a driveway for your property and the property also that's back there. I don't know if that's east or west or
East.
east. Presumably, if there's a variance granted, it does not supersede the easement or have any impact on people getting to their other property. Is that correct? That's a condition we could make.
Actually didn't check. Is that property populated? Or is that just a lot?
There's a home back there, is there
There is a
not?
home?
There's another house in the back of,
Right.
when you're looking from the street to the back of the house.
You
there's
can see
another
it here.
house.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay, there you go.
And it would be probably possible if that needs to be exactly at the easement, that you put this fence around the easement. On the other hand, there's space enough to get to the back.
I guess so then my question would be to Kristen or Attorney Schmidt, do we cause any trouble by granting this with the easement or would that be handled separately?
I think the condition could certainly be put on it, that it doesn't.
yeah, it doesn't say on here.
Yeah, which. So it, because it's a private matter, it really is between those two property owners, but I think. It would make sense to go ahead and put it as a condition on. That's just replacing.
I guess a question to you, speaking on behalf of the owner, do you expect they would mind if we added a stipulation that it not come into the easement?
I don't believe that he would be against this. The only, if you look into this, the driveway is used there, it's not exactly the form which is in this, the sketch there, but there's space enough to get to the backyard.
Right.
Yeah, in the
Right.
actual photo on page 13, it shows it not going into the easement. You can see the footprint of the old fence.
Yeah, I was not sure about that one, whether or not the road has moved or whether the fence has
Well,
moved.
The easement's probably wider than the car path that you see in the photo.
Right,
And from page 12, that looks like a survey map that does define the easement.
Well,
The fence protrudes into it. I'm not concerned that it's gonna block the neighbors. It's just if that's a utility easement or some other easement and they need to come back there with heavy equipment, that fence is gonna come down.
Right.
If that's what needs to happen, is the point.
Yeah, just so you know, though, that's a Michigan mortgage report. Okay, so.
Okay, but
The
it has,
stipulation is there, no property corners were established, that fence, or
yeah,
property lines should not be established by this report,
right,
and so forth and so on. So it's a bit odd that you have coordinates on the angles.
yeah.
For
you-
instance, on the easement, it's north 39 degrees, 7 minutes,
Mhm.
seconds,
Yeah, you have
whatever.
property dimensions and orientation.
Right, that is a mark that you point out, it doesn't seem to match the aerial. So we didn't do this survey, somebody did for a mortgage report and insurance.
Yeah,
that is a copy from Robert Rutter. which you
Sure.
see there.
So I think you have to be cautious about,
Mhm.
it's not a boundary survey.
right. That could be just drawn for reference.
well, it has pretty precise measurements and angles and hundredths of a foot.
That's why, that's the.
Looks like it came off.
The
of the-
paradox almost of but as we said, we didn't make this up. This is what the survey says.
Yeah.
The mortgage report, I should say, down there.
Looks like a page 13. That could be one of the.
Yeah, the bigger concern for me is the straight piece of fence that cuts the cul-de-sac in half.
True.
The straight piece of fence that cuts the cul-de-sac in half.
Yeah, I kind of ignored that one.
Because there are actually two flag lots stacked upon one another, correct? That's what we just said. You have this flag lot and then you have the next one that's east. There
Yeah.
are two flag lots that depend on the ingress, egress easement.
So, Attorney Schmidt, can I ask you a question real quick? Private egresses, does that mean basically the city has no business in them and it's between the property owners to negotiate?
It's private easement would be between the two property owners, but the city does require that you have a lot, it has to be accessible. That's something that they would have got in place in order to get.
So the concern for the city would have been when they split the lots, they had to have it established, but they're not really usually enforced by the city.
The city would not enforce it, it would be enforcement between the two property owners, but the city wouldn't want to take action that way.
Thank you.
Well, it's actually more than two properties because it comes from Wayne Street. That easement crosses that property as well. So there's multiple properties involved.
Right.
Other questions for the applicant? Trudy?
Then you asked about the previous.
Mhm.
Okay, there was one issued in April of '04 and it was final. It doesn't really say where the fence was at. And there was one issued in May of '06 and that was also final. 6-foot tall fence adding 20 to 25 feet to the existing one. So, I remember our zoning ordinance, the one that we're under now was adopted in '07 or '08. Correct? So this would have been under the previous.
So if he's repairing an existing fence that was approved before the existing zoning requirements, does he need a variance?
We don't believe it's a repair. The fence is rotten. Talked with the owner and he came in, it's falling down
Okay,
and the posts are rotten.
so it needs to be built to
Replaced.
existing codes and
Yeah.
ordinances, okay?
I don't have any more questions.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you too.
We'll open it up for public comments. Is there anyone here who would like to speak to this application? All right, thank you. Discussion of the board.
Yeah, so. John, I'm a little bit torn here with the lot definitions. In the zoning manual, page 2,748 in the lot, appendix A, lot definitions. There's a map of a flag lot, which is actually the inverse, illustrated as the inverse of what we're just talking about. And the front lot faces, the front lot of the flag lot that we're discussing faces west, okay, by the definition, which basically faces the rear of the two adjacent lots that are west of that, as well as then the south lots have rear lots, lot lines bordering the lot in question. So by definition, the front lot is, the front of this flag lot is facing the rear of the two adjacent lots that face west. So I'm a bit torn with that premise because the architecture of the house and the front of the house faces north, and secondly, the address is a Park Street address. So as far as what is the front of the house versus the front of the lot, and whether we agree that the front of the house does not have to determine or does not determine the front of the lot, that we actually go by the the zoning manual that the front of the lot faces west as city staff says it does. And so I think we have to agree on which premise we're going to choose here for the argument of determining the height of the fence or fences. Because according to the zoning manual, the neighboring lots, he could be friends with all the neighboring lots and put the 6-foot fence all the way around the property on the neighboring lots and say, I'll pay for your fence on the west side and on the south side, and still have a 6-foot fence. If neighbors want to be nice, and allow them to do that. So that would be the only way he'd be able to do that without a variance, the way the zoning manual describes the flag lot orientation. Or we agree that, in fact, the address and the architecture of the house determines what is actually the front of the lot.
A flag lot is a flag lot. All of the property in that is shaped in that manner. This lot has an ingress and egress from an easement, not part of the lot.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So the private easement isn't part of the illustration on in the manual here then, as far as figure 2-8 on page 2748.
Architecturally, if you look at the house, the front of the house is pointing southeast. And the side of the house with the fence is pointing northeast, which would make it a side yard. And-
No,
And Park Street comes in, that egress comes in aligned with Park Street, but then curves to the front of the house. What architecturally you'd consider the front of the house.
architecturally, the house faces the northeast. And that's where the porch is. Porch is on the northeast end of the house. That's the porch, the enclosed
Okay, and-
porch. Yes.
There's no
Looking
front
at
door.
an
on it.
aerial here.
The front door faces west, which is fine. It's an end entrance to the porch.
Okay,
Into the fenced area.
Yes.
I actually tried to drive by there on the way down here, but it's marked private drive, no entry.
Yeah, but you
So I
just-
didn't, so,
Right.
yeah.
I will say, I did misspeak. I thought you were looking at, I was looking at figure 2.7, and you're right with the definitions, the easement can be a private easement.
Oh.
Considered a flag lot.
Okay.
I think looking at the definition of front
Yeah, for me, I have really no objection to the 6-foot fence on the west property line or on the south-ish property line. Because those are backyards for all the homes surrounding, so they can have a 6-foot
Exactly.
fence
So can you-
anyway.
Right.
So if they put a 6-foot fence up on their, right on their property line,
Exactly.
what's the difference? So, yeah, I don't struggle at all with either of those. You know, the same holds true to the 2 lots to the north could have 6-foot fences
Yeah,
on the other side of the easement. So that section that runs along the easement there, I can see that. So then it's just really the portion that projects into the
Easement, that's the problem.
into the cul-de-sac.
Letters were sent out to adjacent property owners and nothing had been received since, as of October 2nd. Has anything been received since?
I'd agree. I don't see a reason to reject it. I don't know what to do with the easement. But I would move our conversation to the easement comfortably rather than whether or not to approve it. I think all the rest of the fence is fine. Unless anyone else has any objections against the fence in principle. I'd be curious to hear what people think about what to do with the easement, so.
Are we talking about a variance for this section that needs to be rebuilt or all of the red fence shown on the drawing?
It's only the fence on the west side of the house.
Okay,
Oh, so we don't even consider the east
so a
side.
very small section of fence that impacts nobody.
Well,
Yeah,
Is it the yellow highlighted section then?
just, yeah,
It's
just the
The
highlight.
highlighted section then is what we're talking about.
No, that's
No.
in my memo. Go to packet page 21. That is what he wants his fence to be.
And he needs a variance for the entire red section?
That's what he's
In
asked.
in front of the house, on the west side of the house. So if you're starting at the northwest corner of the house, you're going north, kind of appears to be in that easement, and then it goes west. And then it goes south along the west lot line, and then it goes back east, and then it shows a little spot going up towards the house.
Mhm.
That's what he needs the variance for. The area behind that is, regardless of the easement, is in the backyard, so he can have a 6-foot fence.
Okay,
And for at least 20 years, there has been a 6-foot fence there?
It's at least 2004, sounds
Okay.
like, yeah. 20 years, yeah.
So he only needs a variance for the yellow highlighted section, is that correct? On page 12.
no, so it's the whole section west of the house. So it's a box, but it doesn't include the part that sticks straight into the cul-de-sac. I think that's the important part. We don't have to consider the leg sticking out. Which then at that point, it's really only whether or not we add the stipulation to bend the fence along the easement, which I think could be a decent idea. Because we don't have to say anything about the protrusion into the cul-de-sac.
I think the confusion might be on packet page 12. That was our amendment that was concerned about it into the easement. Because there is a 2-unit apartment in the back
Mhm.
that is not shown that is rent. People would be going in and out in that.
Right,
That's what the yellow is. It's just the concern that we had.
right.
so Sean, when you said, I agree with you on the neighbor or neighboring properties. As I said, you could have your neighbors put up your 6-foot fence in their yards and still not apply for a variance, but if we're applying for a variance, the north side of the fence that we were just discussing, whether it's in the easement or not, in terms of zoning, if it's assuming it's a private easement, which it is, that would have to be the 3.5 foot high fence.
I think his
Right.
comment was if that fence had reached all the way to the other side of the easement and gone up against lot 4,
Yeah,
that property could have built a 6-foot
Right,
fence
right.
there.
right.
And they could have built a 6-foot fence along the easement as well. Because again, you can build a 6-foot fence as long as it's in your backyard, which it is for lot 4 equivalently.
Right, but this is a side yard.
You could do it in a side yard as well.
Yeah, but not, not in front of the house. You can do it in a side yard from the house corner rearward.
Right.
So I'm not hearing any opposition to a variance. It's just a matter whether the variance includes the easement or not. Is that correct?
Well, I'm questioning how high the fence is along that easement on the north side. If we agree that 7 feet, sorry, a 6-foot fence is fine on the west side and on the south side, what's that north side? What's the height of the north side?
6 feet.
6
That's
feet.
what he's asking for, and that's what's there now.
Okay.
Yeah, I say I'd be comfortable with it. It's definitely hard to say what it correlates to, but
And
there's a
just,
certain point of how much arbitrariness are we gonna
just
put
to
in there?
maintain or be consistent with what's been there 25 years or so,
Right.
is there any opposition to granting an easement along the existing fence line with the understanding that grant a variance along the existing fence line with the understanding that the existing easement supersedes and overrides any variance we may grant? Meaning if there's an issue with ingress, egress, gaining access back there for anyone who has a right to be back there, the fence would have to come down, or at least that section of it.
I think from what I understood when I spoke with staff earlier, it would be slightly preferable if we said just it's approved as long as it stays outside the easement, which would technically move the fence a slight bit, but it sounds like that's not a huge concern.
And
that-
can we identify where the easement is?
Well, that's on them because they would know what their easement is.
Okay,
So we would just say like, hey, just don't get in the easement, and that'd be our addition to the conditions of approval.
I think John's point is that no one really understands where the easement may be since
it's been there
doc-
25 years.
Yeah,
Why
right.
add that
the,
burden?
Yeah.
the aerial view doesn't match the
To
mortgage
replace it.
report.
Yeah.
What looks like a 15 feet piece of fence.
But I think that's pretty typical. Like, we don't typically require surveys just for our satisfaction. We can say you should know where your easement is, so leave the
I
burden
have
of
an
discovery
easement
on
through my
them.
property and built right through it
Yeah.
with a permit.
So. I guess I have a slight preference for adding, so if I were to make a motion, it would probably be approve with the condition that it not enter the easement. Is anyone against or for that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how staff is going to enforce that without a survey.
Ah, I see.
Right, that's my point.
So now all of a sudden, property owner is gonna incur $1,500, $2,500 to get a boundary survey.
You're saying just don't bother adding that then?
Looking at the aerial on 13, if the fence is going back in the same spot it's been for 20 years, you can see whether the width of the drive path matches the width of the easement. I mean, what's changing? What's significantly different?
That's fine.
I tend to agree. I think we should let them put it back the way it was.
And it's a private easement. If somebody's got a beef with where the fence goes, then
They can,
they can take it up amongst themselves.
Right.
all right, I'm convinced.
There could be clarification provided. Back if we're looking at the or, page 12 and the picture on page 30. Some building like that, and where, yeah, I mean, that's kind of the question, it's like, where is the fence in relation to what's shown on page 12?
I would say that is what it was before. That was,
Not squared up exactly.
it's not rectangular. It's
Right, yeah, it's not perpendicular.
an angle.
There is it's at an oblique angle.
Either way, you could put it a little bit shorter.
Right.
away from these.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, if we add the condition, then the city's expected to enforce it and the city would then have to know where the easement is, which is a pain. So,
Somebody, are we more discussion when we want to try the findings?
I will try the findings. Looking at packet page 10, reading from section 12-10. Subsection A, the zoning board of appeals shall have the power to allow a variance from the application of any provision in this chapter when it is in its opinion there are special circumstances of the property which are not reasonably foreseeable result of the actions of the property owner. I think that condition certainly applies. And strict enforcement of this chapter would unreasonably deprive the owner of lawful use and enjoyment of the property. I think he articulated that the fence provides privacy from cars driving through the ingress, egress easement there. Or the property would be contrary to the spirit and purpose of these provisions or the public interest. So I think it meets the conditions there. And there should be a motion to approve the variance.
Any discussion on that review of the criteria?
Yeah, for me, I'd still want the 3.5 foot fence facing north. And what is considered the side of the yard, which is adjacent to the easement.
I'd probably leave it at 6. So I'd support it as it's provided in the packet.
With the understanding it does not supersede the existing easement.
I think that terminology is probably assumed. Because I'd be cautious of adding it when it doesn't really mean anything. I don't think we have right to violate their private easement if we wanted to.
Lori, do you have an opinion you can render on that?
The easement rights by law would.
Supersede this variance and we do not need to address it. Okay. So I propose the motion that's on packet page 10. Move to approve a fence variance request by Robert Hutter and Martina Hutter for the property located at 1410 Park Street from chapter 12 fences of the Code of Ordinances, section 12-4A to increase the allowable fence height in the front yard from 3 feet 6 inches to 6 feet to allow a wood privacy fence to enclose the front yard, which is the west side of the existing dwelling and south of the ingress egress easement as depicted on the site plan found in the application and included in the October 10, 2024 ZBA agenda packet as the request meets the requirements of section 12-10A1 of the Code of Ordinances as stated in the findings as drafted.
We have a motion. Do we have support?
I support.
Further discussion on the motion? Please call the roll.
Yes.
Mr. Ferris.
Yes.
Mr. Schmidt,
Yes.
Mr. Butcher,
Yes.
Chair Eber.
Yes.
Motion is approved 5-0.
Switch chairs.
Mr. Hubble does not vote, this is an alternate budget purpose.
All right, our
Build your
next.
fence.
Took longer to approve the variance. than what
Our next agenda item is a public hearing for 263 Ridgeway. We'll go ahead and open that public hearing. Is there someone here to speak to that? Please come forward.
Hello, I'm Scott McCray. My son is Jameson McCray, the owner of the home. He's currently seeking to build a 20 by 20 shed on his property. None of the neighbors have complained. In fact, a lot of the neighbors have been very pleased the way he's maintained the yard since he moved. Coming from grand old dame, Mrs. Upton herself, actually, is complimented. So he would like to clear out his third stall in the garage. Garage is kind of overwhelming, it's taking over his garage stall. So what he'd like to do is build that shed. It's in a hidden area in the yard. In the backyard, they considered all angles, all areas in the yard, all coordinates, and they picked a spot in the back that would be well hidden. So we're seeking approval for that.
All right, questions for the applicant from the board?
Yeah, so there's a 3-car attached garage on the south side, facing the south side. And as we've noted in the past, 2-car garage is a right. So, and you've got 3. So so I'm questioning, and you said that you want to clean out the third stall because it's occupied by the yard equipment and so
Yeah,
forth.
he's running out of room in the garage.
Right. So what, to the point of addressing what is a minimum, how did you come up with the 20 by 20 foot structure?
Well, pardon me, he texted me what he wanted to say about this, if you don't mind if I read this to you.
Please do. Sure.
In regards to the structure having to be 20 by 20, he states that the east side of the lot has a lot of open space and can easily support a 20 by 20 structure. It would be well off the property line and well hidden. Given the size of the yard, they bought many things to upkeep the yard. And they have a garage stall, as you know, dedicated. It's been overflowing with things for a year now. And given that they wanted to build a structure that would house everything, maintain the yard comfortable.
Yeah. Well, I suppose the lot itself is made up of multiple lots. So you have, some quote acreage there. So you could actually erect a barn there and say that that's my minimum because more is always better than less. So I'm just questioning the 20 by 20 because it's on the variance principles. It's one of our questions that you still have to be convinced of that this is the minimum to
Eliminate the
prevent
hardship.
the hardship, yeah, or practical difficulty.
I think 20 by 20 is a heck of a shed, to be honest with you. I'm not sure how much equipment he has. There seems to be, I guess my question is, does it have to be that big? And then the next question would be, what do you plan to do with the third stall? If you clean out that one, now you have a 3-car garage and a 20 by 20 shed. That seems to be a tremendous amount of storage for yard and yard work.
Yeah, and by a definition of a 20 by 20, that's the minimum kind of standard size of a garage.
Right.
So that's why I'm
Basically, it's
asking.
an extra garage. You have a 3-stall garage, and now you want to add a shed that would be considered a 2-car garage. So now you're looking at 5 stalls in the yard.
Right.
Basically. Covered storage. That's a lot of storage. I'm just pointing out the fact that's, I know where it's at. I've driven by there many times, and certainly you way they tuck it back in there and everything like that. But again, that's a big storage area, 20 by 20, along with the fact that you already have a 3-car garage.
So that was my question to the applicant.
Other questions for the applicant?
Why is the variance required?
Because I think this is a 3 front yard, 1 side yard lot. Is that correct?
Right, it's a through lot, so it has front yards on basically all the street frontage.
So in packet, page 22, it says ordinance regulations. Bolded and underlined language depicts non-compliance with the zoning ordinance. There's nothing bolded or underlined.
So it's accessory structure in the front or side yard. You're not allowed to put an accessory structure anywhere but the rear yard or backyard. So we don't always list it in the list of criteria because it's not a
Okay.
numerical one.
Right, and I think Sean,
Because of the shape of the yard, there's no rear lot line or yard, it says here. Is that correct?
On packet page 23,
Right?
the second paragraph says section 3.9.
Yep.
It talks about there can't have accessory structures in a front yard, so
Oh,
your
side
through
yard.
lot, you have 2 front yards, and that's why a variance is needed.
Yeah.
and the, sorry,
Oh, yeah, to me, that's the important part. I have 4 questions I always ask applicants, which is, should look at other designs, what's unique about the lot? Is it the minimum change and what's the hardship? And the issue is I can answer for myself what's unique about this lot, which is that it's not only a through lot, it's a through lot with also a road on the side. So you're just surrounded by front yards. And to me, that rings out very strongly of when I look at alternative designs, and maybe you've already done this research, is there anywhere you can fit a shed on this lot that's loud? Because
It's what now?
is there anywhere on this lot you can put a shed that's not either A, in the front yard, or B, along too close to the property line on the northeast? Have you checked if there's anywhere a shed can be?
There isn't.
yeah, I think the, again, the premise of the lot, this seems to be the lot definition night. So I think we have to agree if this is a corner lot, as Sean says, then is a through lot. And on page 2746, my favorite page, it talks about lot types. And there's a corner lot thing, with dimensions and degrees and so forth. But it says, if such a lot abuts 3 or more streets, it shall be considered a through lot for purposes of this ordinance. Now, the street names there are only 2, there are only 2 street names, but it's bounded by the geometry of 3 streets. Let's put it that way. So is it a corner lot that is a through lot as well? Because if you read the through lot definition, it says through lot, through means a lot which is not a corner lot, okay? And with frontage on 2 or more streets. On a through lot, all street lines shall be deemed front lot lines for setback purposes. So I think we need to agree on what we're talking about. Is it a corner lot that is a through lot? Do we consider it that?
And then you have Marina Drive coming around.
Right.
Okay.
I would assume that it's a through lot. Because I would go off what you mentioned, where if it has 3 roads on it, it's considered a through lot, not a corner lot. And I would consider this 3 roads. I think a road bending around the property, I would treat that as 2 for the purpose of the ordinance.
So
Three sides
so
of the
you
property.
see this, so you see this as a through lot, not a corner lot.
Per that definition, yeah. Which would be weird, because then the shed can technically fit along the side of the house that face the southwest.
So the only place really the shed could fit is in Jake, if you're looking at page 37, which is the survey. It looks like the house is approximately, I would say, 27 feet from the north lot line. So the shed would need to be 7 feet from the north lot line and 10 feet from the house. So that would leave you 10 feet. In addition, it would need to be located between the north side of the house. It couldn't extend east and it can't extend north. So you'd be limited to a 10-foot wide shed, probably by, I guess, 30 feet long.
And there's also an easement there that encroaches on that 27 feet, it appears.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I think that's a utility easement. Too. That's different. Yeah, it's talking about the last bit.
Right.
Well, my son said that all sites were considered, I'm reading his note to me. All sites were considered in the yard. The west and south side of the house are the traditional front yard, and a structure would be a nuisance. The north side of the house does not have enough space between the house and the property line for a structure. That leaves the east side of the house, and they picked a spot in the lot that would best hide the structure to minimize the sight lines from passerbys and neighbors. That's this.
Thank you.
Other questions for the applicant? All right, thank you,
I
sir.
heard concern that 20 by 20 is more than the minimum required to resolve the issue. Do you have any, I guess, justification, or what's the thinking there? I don't think we really had any.
I think we would have
Answered.
to say that 10 by 30 is not big enough because he can't meet the criteria anywhere with a 20 by 20. So if he were to be held to it, if he were to not get a variance, he would not be able to get past a 10-foot wide shed.
Yeah, and
Mhm.
20 by 20 is less than 1% of the property. It's a huge
Fast
lot.
math.
Yeah.
It's over an acre.
Right.
No, I know, but
So-
that goes back to the barn. You could put a barn there too.
I understand. But
He could split the lot and put a house there. It's big enough to split the lot.
yeah,
So
For me, they can build out the
house
the
that wide.
garage as living space and build a detached garage, and we would be in the same conversation of, okay, where are we gonna put his garage?
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
So for me, whether this is a 20 by 20 or whether this is a 8 by 14 that comes on a flatbed that we unload, at that point, I'm almost splitting hairs, and
Right.
to what benefit?
Right. Yeah, to me, the issue is the location of the garage. The size of it, we shouldn't control because the issue is there's nowhere to put the garage, regardless what size it is. Like, at that point, it's, every other property owner can have as big of a garage as they want if they put it in the rear lot. To me, the unique element of this
Well,
lot.
not
is that
exactly,
there's-
but
No,
Oh, yeah.
yeah. You can't build a barn in your backyard.
Well,
Sorry, yes.
yeah,
a
but you have
shed.
to be careful. The application
Actually, it
says
says
garage.
Yeah.
The application says garage, but the write-up from staff says
Shed.
utility structure shed.
Because that's an important distinction.
other questions for the applicant? Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll go ahead and open it up for public comment if there's anyone here who would like to speak to this issue. Okay. Yeah, you go right ahead. Discussion of the board.
Yeah, so, Kristen, can you say that slower, that description, just so I can grasp it a little bit? As
About where the garage, if
where a
they didn't want
shed,
a variance to be looked, if they didn't want to request a variance.
correct,
So back on packet page
37.
37.
yeah,
So it could be in the side yard, however, it has to meet the side setbacks.
correct,
So that's along the north lot line.
correct,
So to me, it reads 27 feet and there's an easement in there. But we don't count from the easement, we count from the lot line. So your side setback is 7 feet.
correct,
So it drops you down to 20 feet. You have to have a 10-foot separation from the house.
right,
So that gets you down to 10. So
right,
your width would be 10 feet, and then however deep the house is, so it doesn't extend to the west of the house or to the east of the house. I don't know how easy it is to get to that side of the house.
yeah, because the setback, the minimum front setback is 25 feet in that zone, right? 25 feet,
Well, accessory structures cannot
Right.
extend into the front yard. So it doesn't really matter what, so if the house was set back 50 feet.
That's right.
The front setback is 25 feet, still has to be at 50.
So your dimensions are based on kind of being behind the house
Mhm.
or to the side of the house. The north side of the house.
Correct.
And I'm just trying to understand, and some of these other diagrams illustrate front, side, and rear lots. And they're usually governed by a projection off of the house structure, the house structure.
Is that a
Notices
question?
went out.
No, it's a statement, you know,
Oh,
on the following pages, so I was just trying to visualize that.
Gotcha.
Notices went out to homeowners and property owners within 300 feet. Nothing was received as of October 3rd.
No one.
Anything
I'm not
since?
aware of anyone coming in to look at the file either. So we usually tell applicants that you might want to go talk to your adjacent property owner so they know a letter's coming and they can
Yeah.
answer their questions.
He did do that.
They just did.
Really done a nice job. When he moved in along the fence.
Across the street is the city of St. Joe West Basin Marine. It has,
The W district, I have the wrong-
yeah, which has boat storage outside during the winter, large maintenance sheds on the property within eyesight of this property, correct?
Mhm.
I mean,
There's boats that are up on their hoists. right
Yeah, I
across
know.
the street from
Right.
where the marina is.
Which is arguably bigger than your garage or shed.
yeah, yeah,
And there's
that's the point.
probably 10 of them on hoists.
Yeah. And then winter, they put them on the jacks or the stands and they're out there all winter. Yeah.
I guess I'm still struggling with the minimum size.
So the
And
way,
then Kristen's suggestion of what it could be without a variance.
does that make sense? Because we can make sure that follows. To me, the minimum size that could be allowed without a variance, that is a big part of what I would use to decide this.
Correct.
Like, there's just almost no option on this lot. And I've had sympathies before for corner lots, and a triple road lot is gonna be, it's just very difficult to find a place to put a structure. If this was a structure in the front yard and there's room in the back, I'd be a lot more concerned about how big it is. So when you just can't fit a structure on this lot, I I'm pretty sympathetic that that's just a very difficult situation to be in. So that's why I'm not focusing on the size. There's times where the size matters, but in this case, the location is really the hard part. There's one single spot they can put a garage of a very unique size. And otherwise, there's nowhere to fit on this lot.
But that's what I'm saying is that I would consider that the minimum within the boundaries of the constraints of of the property with no variance.
Right, so then do you ask the question, is it unnecessarily burdensome to say that the only garage you can have is at this exact spot? That's the
Exactly,
question we have to ask ourselves.
right. That's where I'm coming from.
Right. I don't know. I would be sympathetic that it's a little unnecessary to say that you can have an acre lot and the only spot you can put a barn is right here because you didn't shift your house a little bit off. It seems like the lot's pretty unique in that sense.
I would further argue that if we did require that the shed go there, if you look at page 26, now all of a sudden that structure is in close proximity to the neighbor on Ridgeway. When I think about the property on Marina Drive that's adjacent, they've got a garage and a driveway
Yeah.
immediately in their front yard, and then the bulk of that house is up at the higher elevation of Ridgeway. You know, so for me, I think the location makes sense. I feel like I'm splitting hairs if I say, okay, you can have a 10 by 30 in this location and you can't have a 20 by 20 over here.
Right.
To what benefit am I deciding that? I would far rather this shed of whatever dimension be located where they're proposing it rather than closer adjacent to the neighbor on Ridgeway. Further discussion?
Nope.
Somebody want to try the findings? Oh, I do. Did I do that last time?
I got that written down, I got that. You just didn't do the gavel, but
I can do it. I like gaveling.
I can try and do findings.
All right.
All right. Criteria A, the variance is not detrimental to the adjacent property and surrounding neighborhood. Actually, Chair Hubert just brought up a very good point of, I think the variance is going to decrease the detriment to the adjacent property. The surrounding neighborhood is a large marina, which I'm sure is not going to be particularly troubled by a shed surrounded by trees. So I don't see any concerns there. Variance would not impair the intent of the purpose of this ordinance. Again, I think getting the accessory structures out of the view of the street is usually one of the big concerns, trying to get like a beautification of the neighborhood. And I think based on this structure, it's doing a pretty good job of hiding where this structure is. So I think it does actually better meets the intent of the ordinance than the only technically valid location would. Exceptional or extraordinary circumstances apply to this property in question. I think a lot bounded by 3 roads in an area next to a almost commercial setting is a pretty exceptional circumstance. Not to mention the closeness of the house to the northern property line makes it pretty impractical to try and find a way to fit an accessory structure on this building or this lot. Criteria D, variance is necessary preservation of a substantial property right. We have an entire code on accessory structures because it's something that people like to build. So I think it is a substantial property right to be able to build an accessory structure within reason. So that's where I'd say there's a property right there. The condition or situation is not so generally recurrent in nature to make it necessary to build a regulation. I think that's true. There's not a lot of lots like this. Criteria F, the condition is not the result of actions of property owner. I believe that is true. G, the strict compliance would be unnecessarily burdensome. Again, prohibiting the use of an accessory structure seems unnecessary. It doesn't necessarily make it the accessory structure would be in a worse spot if they tried to meet the ordinance. It's a very narrow, very specific area that meets, I think that would be pretty burdensome and for no purpose. Criteria H is the minimum change necessary. Again, the structure has to move somewhere, so the only thing we can change is the location variance. I don't think there's any other variance we could change that would meet the needs. And then variance I, the variance will only relate to this property, and I believe that is also true.
Discussion on the findings. Someone like to make a motion based on those findings?
Sure. I can motion to approve a variance request for property known as 263 Ridgeway from section 393 of the zoning, A of the zoning ordinance to allow 20 by 20 accessory structure shed in the secondary front lawn or yard along Marina Drive, approximately 36 foot from the secondary front lot line along Marina Drive and 19 foot from the north lot line based on the application and site plan prepared by the applicant and included in the October 10th, 2024 zoning board of appeals agenda packet. Based on the draft findings, as the request meets the required standard under section 15410 of the zoning ordinance with the condition that the structure be placed as proposed on the site plan.
Do we have support for the motion?
So moved.
Further discussion on the motion? Please call the roll.
Mr. Ferris,
Yes.
Mr. Schmidt,
Yes.
Mr. Butcher,
No,
Chair Eber,
Yes.
Mr. Stowe,
Yes.
motion is approved 4-1.
All right, good luck.
Thank you.
All right, I gotta get my right agenda here.
You have nothing.
Item 4 is discussion of future zoning ordinance changes.
Did you get a different one on that?
Oh, you got it emailed and she dropped off hard copies here on the that.
you were late.
I'm sorry.
And you were late.
So, a couple weeks ago at a city commission meeting, we were talking about mechanical equipment and conversation got involved, so city commission asked that we put together a list of things in the zoning ordinance that we can work on. So I came up with the list that's in there. The planning commission talked about it at their meeting last week and really added, I think, did we? So if you think.
I don't know, there was that whole discussion of cell phones versus landlines and rental units and wow, it went off the tracks.
So, I mean, I added that so for short-term rentals, you have to have a phone in your unit that you're renting, and that's in the code of ordinance, that part of the rule, and there was a gentleman there for something else on the agenda, and he added that should be changed. But that's a code of ordinance regulation, so I don't know where that'll go. So if there's anything you're thinking about that needs to be updated on in the zoning ordinance that doesn't make any sense, we've been ticking away at a few of them out of this board.
What is the issue with the mechanicals in the front yard?
So the ordinance, the zoning ordinance since 2007 does not allow mechanical equipment to be located in the front yard. And if it's located in the side or rear yard, it needs to be 3 feet from a lot line. So all new houses comply with that. So when you come in and you need a permit to replace your piece of equipment outside, you're replacing the whole thing. You're just not taking the cabinet out, you're replacing something inside and putting the cabinet back down. You have to come into compliance. So some people have had to move their equipment to the back, which has added some cost to their project. Some people, we've had some contractors install equipment without a permit, and then after the fact have had to relocate it. So there's been concerns expressed that the cost involved in moving it for something that's been there for 20 years, why should I have to move it now? The planning commission asked for some additional research on it, and we'll get that back to them for their November meeting. The impression I got was that the equipment should not be in the front yard. I think there'll be some discussion regarding sides, there's different.
And that's only for existing mechanicals that were put there.
I would say yes.
Is it,
But the planning commission hasn't gotten that
oh,
deep into their conversations.
okay.
They heard some comments from some residents, predominantly from below the bluff. who are-
Yeah, right.
You know, it's hard when you have a 33-foot wide lot. Build out to the 5-foot setback as you're allowed. You know, your air conditioning, you can only go in the backyard. But it appears from some of the research we've done in the last week that a lot of the homes, not a lot. There's been several homes south below the bluff that have received variances in the past for like 2 feet from the lot line, which is something the building code really frowns upon. So that has probably added to some of those issues. And there's reasoning why through the building codes, why it should be 3 feet off the lot line, you know, for to get around it. Yeah, to park in the backyard, get back there.
Right,
rather than Jumping over the equipment, you know, you might have you know, if your neighbors don't like air conditioning, they may hear this equipment run if that's next to their bedroom, you don't really know, so. And they'll talk about it for probably 3
Forever.
couple months, but they asked for some more information. And we've gotten that, we're working on getting that all put together and we'll see where.
Yeah, do you have a list? I thought you emailed us a checklist of some of the ordinances that you were going to investigate. Can we, or did I, is that
No,
on?
and what I had sent was what you, the sheet out up there, just some things that things that have been on the planning commission's agenda, annual report, and then as things come up, they kind of get back.
So at the present time, the ordinance in the city of St. Joe is you cannot have your mechanical stuff in the front yard
In the front yard, and it has to be 3 feet
From
from the
the s-
side lot line.
from the side yard. So if you have an old one there at the present time in the front yard and it breaks down and you need to get a new furnace or whatever, air conditioner, it has to go out of the front yard. It can go side or back, but not in the front.
And in the side, it has to be 3 feet.
Yeah, I understand it. And despite the cost to the homeowner to change ducts and things like that.
Right.
And that's what the planning commission said the way it should go.
So they wanted it reviewed.
They
Well,
want-
no,
Or they're
originally in
reviewing it.
2007, I was years.
Okay,
ago.
okay,
You
okay.
know, I think that's pretty standard. Most places have places where mechanical equipment.
Well, I think the beef that anyone would have is, well, if I'm putting it back where it was, what's the problem?
Well, you had
Always
one-
the beef,
well,
yeah.
you had a case here. A couple years ago, we had 2 cases that came in at about the same time. The apartments at Pearl and Wayne,
Mhm.
where they put in, they added air conditioning, so they had those mini splits. So all that equipment's outside, it's a corner lot, it's set back from the road. And it got approved for however many mini splits, and all the equipment has to be, you know, the tubes on the outside are painted black, so it looks like the building, and there's screening. Well, there was an additional case on Lions Park Drive, and when the 300-foot notices went out, the next door neighbor came in and said, that equipment is partially in my yard. So the person wanted to replace the equipment in the exact location. Well, it really wasn't all on their property. So that's, kind of, you know, we don't catch a lot of those, but that's an extreme event that happened.
So they withdrew their application for variance then, and city staff did go out and meet with that owner and help them to determine other places that it could be.
Because on the north side of the house, there was ample space for the property owner chose a totally different spot. And
So
that's the-
it's still basically in the planning stages. It's not etched in stone yet.
Right now, it's etched in stone.
It's etched in stone.
That you can't put in the
Thank-
front yard.
That's
Correct.
The
Right.
city commission asked that it be reviewed.
Right.
And it was based on the concerns you voiced, and why can't we put it back, that was there before, that was the primary
Yeah.
concern.
Commissioner Sorolla said he got like 18 emails.
So to put it simply, if someone is wanting to get a variance to put, in their front yard, it's against the ordinance, period.
All your variances requests are against the ordinance. That's why you're.
That's,
I understand that. You know what I'm saying? No.
Right. But,
I want to be clear because, you know, I've been grilled about this 2 or 3 times.
okay, this past week, we've done a lot of research on this. Since 2017, since we got Ed Jewell as mechanical inspector.
Mhm.
And because it is in our ordinances, he is more cognizant, and we tried to educate the HVAC contractors. And we've kept records of how many permits were given, how many problems we had in each year. And I can provide this to you.
Oh.
Yeah, each year we can see that the problem goes down. And in 22 and 23, those years combined, we had over 300 permits where equipment could be outside and could possibly have to be relocated. Of that, only 4 were not, or were a problem, or had to be, people didn't want to move it. But that's 4 out of 300. It was only around 1% now that is a problem. The HVAC guys are getting
Right,
the message that when you're in St. Joe, let's look at options, or let's
Yeah.
look at how this could be reconfigured to where it's not such a problem. The big problem is, and I'll be honest, when I went and really reviewed the problems, is when we have previous variances where people were allowed to build to 2 feet from the lot
Yeah.
line. So now, when they need their new equipment, there's no room to put it where it was, so they have to go to the backyard.
right. I just wanted to,
Oh, I'll chime in on that. Just because you've got data that says this isn't a problem, it is still costing homeowners dollars.
right,
It's just the HVAC guys charge, that's in his, they're not seeing the delta between, okay, here's your price to relocate it here versus your price to relocate it in the back. That homeowner isn't seeing that delta, so they don't know that they're paying an extra $1,200 for the line set that's got to go all the way to the back of the house.
right.
But I like statistics, so I was, we're keeping track of it,
Mhm.
because when Ken Jewell, who's the mechanical inspector, started, we met with a lot of people. He meets with a lot of people on how to relocate it and how to do line sets and how to reconfigure.
But that doesn't mean that that cost isn't being passed on to the homeowner and becoming a burden.
oh, definitely. No,
Exactly.
that's what brought it up.
Right,
Exactly.
exactly.
Codes are always silent about costs.
Right,
Right.
right,
Yeah.
right, right.
But I mean, the issue brought before the city commission was this is overly burdensome.
People who have variances, because we don't see a lot of it when were built and there's room on the side. They have room for this equipment.
We don't have the issue anymore because we require site plans. We
Right.
Require them to show the location of the mechanical equipment. And on several occasions during the review process before a permit's issued, they have to update, revise their site plan, showing the equipment in the front of the location. So it's addressed earlier on than maybe what happened in the past, and that's why we've seen that.
I'm not disputing the ordinance. I'm just saying that, I've been grilled about this. How can we do this? And I say, and I want to make sure that I know what the ordinance is, which I do now. And I also understand where it can go, where it can't go. I understand that. And I also understand, as Sean said, this can be a cost issue. But that's neither here nor there. The ordinance is very straightforward now, where you can or cannot put your HVAC stuff. That's it.
We did research other municipalities and find out.
Oh, no, I get all that. My feedback was, well, how the hell can you do that in a minute? It's been here for 35 years now. It's not gonna cost me an extra $1,500 because the planning commission don't like it in my front yard. I'm just saying.
It's part of the information that will be provided to the planning commission.
Thank
what
you.
The reason for that is, why
sometimes when you're out in real America, they don't get it. And they seem to think
I'm
so glad it's
being recorded.
that, well, no, I'm just saying that they don't understand and they think that why does it change? And why did you do that, Mike?
Sure.
So in the spirit of trying to diminish the Saint No reputation,
I've never
Uh,
heard that.
oh yeah, it was
That's
brought
awesome.
up. Sorolla brought it up.
When
I
did
mean,
this get
this is gonna be a kind of a movement, right?
Oh, wow.
With a little bit of, someone's gonna champion it.
Mhm.
Not
But,
paying attention.
so I just got the feeling that, the zoning, board or the zoning itself, the ordinances are under, scrutiny, because of this Saint No reputation. But when you get right down to it, we know that ordinances are important, rules are important. Once you study them and once people understand them, they might be a bit more sympathetic. But Kristen, do you have a list that is getting momentum in the commissioners' meetings that we could start to have a little bit of foresight on, investigate ourselves, like what might be scrutinized, other than us just,
They didn't
going through the pages?
They didn't talk about other rules because they don't use the zoning ordinance like other people do, predominantly the four of us sitting out here. But I know some members of the planning commission, with the ZBA, have been around, they've seen the zoning ordinance change, and that's why I asked, if there's anything, you guys hear things from your neighbors. I don't live in town, so I don't hear anything from my neighbors. My town has its own issues with the zoning ordinance. They all do. There's things you're gonna like about it, and there's things you don't like about it. And I think it's just, thinking about things, or, if you're out and about and you see other towns, like with the sign ordinance, if you go to other towns, I say to people, look at the signs downtown. Go to Holland, most places only have one sign outside. Go to Traverse City, there's one sign. It's not like 10 signs on the outside of the building, it's one or two. So it's looking at what do you really want your built environment to look like in the future? And that's what zoning's about. And, some things are easy to correct, some things are not. And that's, some things,
I just wanted to make sure that I had the facts.
What?
I just wanted to make sure that I had the facts. That's all. And I do now. That I'm not disputing the decisions or anything. I just want to make sure that when I am approached, that I can say, whoa, this is it.
You could also go back and read the planning commission's packet from last week.
Yeah.
The October 3rd meeting, because there's a lot of information in there about mechanical equipment and what we learned from other communities from research that was done back.
Any other old business?
Yeah, and if you need any illustrations for that landscaping document, I'm willing to do those. That accompany, the text. If you want, for retaining walls or definitions, or, the geometries involved in the, natural grade that we talked about. I thought about it, I'd be willing to do, some just, that help, as they are in their, in the manual already. Different sections have illustrations.
Any other old business?
Nope.
Public comment? You're gonna see us next month. Well, welcome. We'll look forward to that.
So you see how the lay of the land before.
See
you-
how the sausage is made.
Yeah, before
Yeah,
you
okay.
come into the line of fire.
I'm on the zoning board of Bedford Park in Illinois. It's right outside of Chicago. And I was a trustee there, and I just purchased a second house here. back in August.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Welcome.
I wanted to have a house here for years. Now I have my second home here.
Nice.
Excellent.
You're welcome.
Welcome.
So then we've got adjournment and then we've got reports.
It was some weird thing in the computer.
Okay,
When you adjourn.
excellent.
I'd like to get on the updated site, or agenda.
Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I make this a motion.
Yeah.
Support?
Second, Yeah.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank
We
you.
are adjourned.
All right.
You did a great job.
Did a great job.